Hello, everyone who already joined us. We'll give another minute or so to people to still join to the session and we will kick it off. So this is time to grab your coffee and we'll begin very shortly. Hi everyone. I see that people still keep coming, so we'll give another couple of moments and we will start in a moment. All right, we're 2 minutes past the hour. I think it's a good time to start our session. Hi everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for this very practical session on how to avoid misconfiguration for database workload to make sure your database workload are performant, resilient, cost optimized, and doing so with Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP and NetApp Workload Factory. This is going to be today a very practical session, and we're going to dive into 3 cases where customer didn't configure their workload correctly and faced either failure, rising cost, loss of availability, loss of connectivity, and we will tell you all about those cases. My name is Semyon Mazor. I'm a senior product specialist here at NetApp, and I'm very glad to be joined today by 2 experts straight from the NetApp Innovation Center, Esti and Luba. Hi to both of you. Could you please present yourself?
Hi, thank you, Semyon. So, hi everyone. Super excited to be here. My name is Esti Lipkin, and I'm a product manager. I am working on the databases part in Workload Factory, which we will cover shortly.
Thanks, Esti. Hey, everybody. I'm Luba, and I'm a product solution architect. I work with customers and partners on their deployments of FSx for ONTAP with and without databases.
Thank you for joining us today. You're, I think, the best people to tell all about customer cases and what happened to them. Just a few housekeeping. We plan for roughly 45 minutes of presentation, and then we will dedicate time for questions. This session is live and also recorded and will be available on demand. If you have any questions, please write us to the Q&A panel. We will try to address it during the session. And as I said, we'll dedicate time at the end. To start with, we would like to have a poll and learn more about you. So you now have a panel on your screen, and we would like to ask you, what is your role to learn more about our audience today? Are you a cloud admin, a storage admin, a DBA, or perhaps has a different role? So please choose the most fitting option that you have on the screen, either cloud administrator, storage administrator, database administrator, perhaps something other jobs, which are very welcome as well. And select the most fitting option for you so we can learn a bit more about who we have today in our session. All right, so most of our attendees today are either storage administrators or have different other roles, and just a few DBAs and few cloud admins. So you're all very welcome and thank you for joining us today. So for the agenda, we will have a short recap on database optimization on AWS, and then we straight dive into 3 customer cases, 3 incidents. First about SQL Server that had a connectivity loss. The second about performance degradation for Oracle DB. And the third is about rising cost and loss of availability of SQL Server. So we will tell you what about that customer, what he had in his environment, what happened to him, why it happened, how it could be avoided, and how you can avoid such cases from happening in your environment, and also how you could do it automatically and make sure you aligned with all the best practices recommendation with a tool called Workload Factory. And at the end, we will have some time for Q&As. So if we're ready, let's start with the first part and talk about database optimization with FSx for ONTAP and Workload Factory. So as I guess most of you, if not all of you know, FSx for ONTAP is a great great option for optimizing databases on AWS for any self-managed databases, because it provides first powerful protection to meet even the stringent RPO and RTO requirements with application over snapshot, disaster recovery options, and efficient backup capabilities. Then it also provides high performance to maintain low latencies for your database with high throughput, high IOPS, and intelligent caching. Then it has unique cloning technology of FlexClone, which provides the ability to run different database environment with access to the production data without actually accessing the production data itself, and providing this access instantaneously without adding additional storage capacity. And while doing all that, FSx ProTop also provides options to cost optimize the operation by using Fever EC2 cores with the thin clones, with different storage efficiency technology, and also option to optimize the database licenses.
Semyon, a quick question here. I'm sure that our audience, which is mainly pretty technical, they would like to know how to actually achieve those benefits and not just what is theoretically possible, right? So could you please tell us a bit on how to get it?
Of course, and thanks for raising that, because this is exactly what we are going to dive on today. So FSx Frontal provides great options to optimize, but there's one important aspect to be considered, which is the configuration. In order to actually benefit from the different capabilities that FSx Frontal provides, you need to use it correctly. As the great phrase says, with great power comes great responsibility. FSx Frontal provides a lot of different functionality, but therefore you also need to use it correctly to actually benefit from all that. So what we see on our screen now is a slide with combination and collection of different configuration to set up SQL Server correctly. And as you can see, it refers to the storage layer, to the compute layer, and to the database layer itself. Each of them has plenty of different configuration, and in some cases, there even could be conflicting. So once the person who coming to implement that need to know what he does, or having a tool to implement to help him doing that. So this is why we're here today, actually, to help with several aspects of this and tell what was wrong with different configuration of several customers and how you can avoid them, and also to see how you can do that automatically. So with that, let's have our next poll, which actually contains two questions. First, we would like to ask you, as part of your responsibility for the database workload, on which layer you're mostly interested in. First, on the storage optimization, you're looking at just particularly on the storage layer with accessibility, performance, utilization, cost, etc. Or you're looking on the database layer to see what's happening on the database itself, or perhaps you're looking on both of them, both the storage and the database. The second question we have is, how often do you review your database configuration? Again, we're looking here on configuration, so we would like to ask you, are you doing it on regular basis, perhaps monthly or quarterly?
Semyon, I believe that the second poll is not yet on their screens. I think that they only see the first question as for the moment.
I see both of them.
If
The
anyone
second one
could
is just
ping
below
us.
that.
Yeah, and if not,
Yeah,
then
I
we
guess.
will pull the other poll in a second.
Yeah, actually, yeah,
Oh,
I see the result for both of
awesome.
them. So for the first question, I see it's almost half of the audience looking on the storage layer, half for both of them. And for the second question about how often do you review your configuration, it's kind of split between the options. Some of them do it regularly, and then some, actually the majority are only when there's a problem, and the others are rarely, reader never. And I think this is, you find this session today very useful because it will help you to make sure, no matter the sequence you're doing it, that you have the right configuration there. So let's go into actual
Guys, for
cases.
sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you all. So let's go straight to the cases and start with the first one. Luba, can you tell us what happened in our first case and tell us about that customer, what happened to him and how it could be avoided?
Absolutely. So I'll start by saying that the different cases we're going to present today are all real cases that happen to customers. Of course, we removed any identifiers from it, but the story is correct. So let's start with case number one. Case number one happened to one of our financial customers that been using FSx for ONTAP for quite a while, and one of their uses for that is use of databases. Now, because their database is crucial for their workload, different applications that are running, they chose the option to use a multi-AZ strategy with FSx for ONTAP, providing them greater availability and resiliency. But even with that, what happened is that one day they did a scheduled patching, and the problem was that they experienced a connectivity loss to the database during this scheduled patching window. Now, when they investigated the problem, they identified that the problem was that the MPIO policy was misconfigured, and that caused all the traffic to go through a single path, and since this path was down, they lost connectivity to the database. Now, for those of you who might not be familiar with that, MPIO is a strategy and a topology that is designed to manage multiple paths between the server and the storage. You can see it here in the presentation. The X presented it quite well in the middle of the view that we have there. Now, MPIO also provides a lot of redundancy and load balancing. And when the MPIO is not configured correctly, it may not handle the failures, and load balancing will not be effective. Exactly what happened with this customer. Now, specifically in this example, what the customer done, he did not configure the policy, the MPIO policy, to be round robin. Now, round robin is a quite common use, and it's essentially a load balancing policy that helps to distribute the IO request evenly across the available paths, and it also can manage a situation when a single or more paths become unavailable. The problem with this customer that their MPIO configuration was not set to round robin, and when one side of the storage became unavailable, again, as expected, the problem was that the database could not move to work with the secondary node. So that was the problem, and the fix was relatively easy. They adjusted the policy, and from that point on, they have not suffered the same problem.
Semyon, back to you.
Thank you, Luba. I think this is a classic case when, as we said, FSx can provide, and in this case, it's unique capability to provide shared block storage across availability zone, and one can think, all right, I have FSx, it's shared across availability zone, so I have the redundancy I'm looking for. But again, the configuration are crucial part of that, so we need to make sure to implement them correctly. And besides the practical recommendation and the fix to that case that you just presented, there's also a tool. This also could be done automatically with Workload Factor, right? So before going and showing how this could be done, just let me sure everyone is aligned on what is Workload Factory. And actually, it is a tool to orchestrate best practices for different workloads on AWS that are running on FSx for ONTAP. There's generally three areas that it helps with. First, with A0 operation, with planning. It provides TCO calculators and migration advisors. It also helps with A1 operation for deployment, to deploy the workload, implementing all the best practices, and it also provides infrastructure as a code scripts to be used in existing workflow automation. And it provides day two operations to operate and optimize existing workload, which we're going to focus on today, with different dashboards to manage the inventory, to see the configuration, and to identify and fix drift with well-architected dashboard. So let's go into Workload Factory and see how it actually looks like and how this can be done.
Yeah, absolutely, Semyon. So let's take a look at Workload Factory. What you see before you is the main page of Workload Factory. Now, I do want to state a few things here. Workload Factory is a free tool. It's a SaaS solution, which means no installation are required. You can start using it almost immediately. We also implemented within a gradual trust policy, which means you can choose how much you trust us, right? You can start with just read-only options and see your configuration and see the different suggestions. And as your confidence grows, you can also allow Workload Factory to actually run different actions for you, like fixing different configurations. We're going to talk more about permissions later in this session. Now, Workload Factory is not just for databases. Actually, Workload Factory supports different different workloads running on FSx for ONTAP. Today's session is obviously targeting databases, but Workload Factory can help you with different operations you're doing with FSx for ONTAP, from EDA to AI, general storage, VMware, and much more. Right. So let's begin. And by the way, this demo, we're going to have two different demos in today's session. The first one, I'm going to cover the part about Well Architect and all the things around best practices. And in the later part of this webinar, Esti is going to show you what else she has in store for you. So, Well Architected, what does it mean? You remember a few slides ago, there was this very scary looking slide with only part of the different best practices that comes from different vendors, right? From the vendors responsible for the storage, from the vendors responsible for the database, and obviously there's a vendor who is responsible for the OS on the server, the host that hosts the database. All of that is a lot. And we have here in the webinar today people from across all fields, and I'm sure that each one of you are quite familiar with the best practices in your environment. The storage admin among yourself know very well how to configure the storage layer. Your DBAs know exactly how to configure the database and so on. But what happens when you have the combination of all those requirements? How do you make sure your environment is configured correctly, fully? How do you make sure you don't have to chase different best practices? Well, Workload Factory is the tool to do that. What Workload Factory can do, it can automatically run all the configuration checks for you and provide you with actionable suggestion to adjust the configuration and make sure your environment is set correctly. So before we'll dive into the well-architected, I just want to show you our inventory view where Workload Factory will automatically identify your database and their structure, and you will be able to look in the environment and and see the recommendations. Now you can see that we have different types of recommendations in different categories, from the storage to the compute to the database level, resiliency and cloning. All the things you need to make sure your environment is configured correctly. Now, remember our financial customer who had a problem with MPIO? Well, let's see how we can see that and where Workload Factory can help with that. So you can see we have here the options to look at the operational system configurations. And you'll see different checks that the system will automatically run on your MPIO, not just the policy, making sure it's adjusted in this case to round robin, but also the number of sessions, the timeout, the status, and more. For each and every check that we are running, you'll be able to see that Workload Factory have the option here, view and fix. If I'll click here, you'll see that Workload Factory provides you with the list of all the different drives that are not configured correctly, and it will identify that all the drivers on its own. No need for you to go ahead and configure anything or say to the system, those are the drives that I have. I've added a drive, I removed a drive. Workload Factory does all the identifications for you. Clicking here on the fix will provide you all the information you need to know before making a change in your configuration, from a summary of the action. What are we going to do? What will happen? And in the notes on the bottom of this view, you'll be able to see also the information on whether or not there's any impact on your environment. Now, from here, you have two options. You can either click on continue and allow Workload Factory to adjust the configuration for you, or, and customers are different, you can also choose to take this information and do the change manually yourself during, I don't know, change request window or something like that. Workload Factory provides you all the information you will need to do from the technical aspect and also the operational aspect to manage your environment. And that's it. You can see simply by clicking on the continue, Workload Factory will go ahead, will adjust the configuration, and the score will change, and the setup will also change as well. You'll be able to see that the configuration will be adjusted and will be set up as you can see it's optimized. And because Workload Factory runs a check every 24 hours, and by the way, ad hoc checks are available as well, you'll know that your configuration is set up correctly on an ongoing basis, not just one-time thing. And that is it, I think, for this example.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
so much.
that's great, Luba. Thank you. I think this is great to see how all the list, which is kind of, again, you need to collect from different documentation in places, and now coming into life, and to see how automatically you can go over the different configuration that need to be set up correctly, and Workload Factory does on different layers and implement that. And this customer that lost his availability and connectivity to the storage could avoid that situation by just simply running Workload Factory. We'll just mention that might some of you thinking how Workload Factory connects to your environment, what permission you need to provide. So we'll cover that towards the end of the session to address everything on how relates how you can use it and what practically it requires. With that, let's move to the next case. Esti, can you tell us what happened to our second example?
Absolutely. So our second case is actually happening to a customer from the government sector. Now, this customer, as probably many of you, used to run on-premises, and he was happy, totally happy with what he had on-prem. He had an old FAS. He had a bunch of HDDs that, as you know, shouldn't be too much performant, pretty much limited IOPS, but his Oracle production database used to run perfectly, no complaints. But then comes a day and there is a requirement to move everything to the cloud. I hope I think that it sounds familiar to most of you. And everyone told him FSX is great. FSX is running on SSDs. It gives you the best performance. And that awesome marketing slide that we showed you earlier was everything that the customer has hoped for, right? So he set up SnapMirror, he did his migration, he activated his Oracle, now on FSX, with faster drives, with better throughput and IOPS. But what happened? Performance dropped. Suddenly, he suffers from horrible latency. Users are complaining, and he comes to NetApp with a surprise saying, "What happening, guys? I mean, you promised me something. Why is my Oracle suffering that much?" So in that case, the root cause was actually a misconfiguration. During the SnapMirror, that customer accidentally set the tiering policy to all. That means that data is being copied directly to the S3 instead of the SSD. So Oracle was actually reading from S3 instead of SSD. That could definitely explain the performance. By the way, I also forgot to mention, the customer, after he suffered from that performance degradation, he decided to increase the throughput of the FSX. But as you can imagine, it didn't help. Now, when we know the root cause, it explains everything. It wasn't because of the throughput. It wasn't because of the IOPS. It was because of the tier of the drives. So that sounds like something pretty basic, but it could happen. And here, in fact, it happened to a great customer just because of a small misconfiguration that was accidentally missed because eventually we're all humans and there's only much we can control and we can monitor.
I see. In some cases, it's right to do this type of snapshot, of tiering policy, right?
Absolutely. I mean, tiering policies set to all can be very, very beneficial for many cases, and I would normally suggest to do it in other migrations. But when it comes to Oracle files and
Absolutely.
specifically data files, that could be a bad idea.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's okay to migrate it with all, but then change it to automatic. That means that it moves back to SSD. So that was that case for that customer. And once again, it was such a small misconfiguration that could easily be missed. And as we promised you, Workload Factory can be your guide to validate that you did not miss, you did not do something manually.
Esther,
So
before you show how it can be correctly, I
yes,
think it's
absolutely.
also, as you said, it's a classic case of like customer that familiar with ONTAP, know how it does, then migrate to the cloud, and suddenly something not working well, and the first reaction in many cases is it's not as it should be, right? The performance, something is wrong with the performance, and
You
we
lied to
move
me.
to SSD. Now that we run to HD, now we are on SSD, and then we see exactly the importance of the configuration right there. When
Exactly.
just a small configuration that made all the change.
Now, if you're very into the bits and the bytes and you're an expert in ONTAP, you can probably go to the CLI and you can go to the volume configuration and you can check the tiering policy that is set on the volume. But wouldn't it be much easier to simply click here and see this line saying not optimized, click on view and fix, get a quick explanation on for optimal database performance and cost efficiency, blah, 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 you need to have the right tiering policy. And then, oh, you know what? Actually, what I'm showing you is SQL, but it happened for Oracle. So just for the accuracy, I'd like to change to Oracle just to show you that it looks exactly the same in Oracle as well. So we'll move to Oracle server. Scroll to the same location right here of the storage configuration ONTAP configuration category. And right here, we can see the same tiering policy not optimized check. By clicking on View and Fix, you'll see that we have identified that the tiering policy is set to all when it should be, well, in this case, set to none. And once again, if we click on Fix, we get all the steps that are recommended, what should happen, what will happen if you allow Workload Factory to do it for you. You can see the recommendation based on the database file. There are different files in different databases, such as data, redo, archive, or log and data in SQL. So each one has its own recommendation. You can trust Workload Factory to do it on your behalf, or you can just take it and tell Workload Factory, thank you for your recommendation. I prefer to do it on my own. Click here on cancel and fix it on your own. So this is just another example of an issue that could have been avoided using this automatic configuration check with Workload Factory.
Cool. So we covered 2 out of 3. We covered 2 out of 3 cases. Luba, let's go straight to the third one. Can you tell us what happened there?
Of course, since you asked. Absolutely. So this is a customer from the life science world, and again, a customer who's experienced with ONTAP in the past, and they started using FSX for ONTAP and for their databases. Now, this specific customer had a production database, super important data, and what they did, they've utilized one of ONTAP's most, I would say, used or essential options within it. It's the ability to create a clone of the database. A clone is essentially a very thin copy of the database, can be created instantly, immediately, takes no space at all when it's first created, and it's a great tool to use when you do things like testing, development. Think about it, you have a database now and you want to run some tests, but you don't want to run it, of course, on your production database. Quickly, with FSx Frontend, you can create a clone, a copy of your data, of your database, separately, and you can run all your test data. And that's exactly what this customer did. It created a clone and ran their checks on that. Now, after a while, what they've noticed is the space available on that particular volume started to decrease. And that specific customer couldn't really understand why it's happening, right? The database size should not change dramatically, but they kept seeing that this available space kept getting lower and lower. Now, when they checked that, what they've identified is that they simply forgot to remove the clone after all the tests has been done and the production database has been updated. They did not remove the clone, so the clone kept growing because, of course, the original database had been changed. So the clone grew more and more, and the space on the volume became less and less available. The other configuration they did not have, when they run this volume, they did not set it to auto-grow, which meant it could not automatically increase in size if needed. Now, it's a great customer and they know what they're doing, so they've identified this problem before their database became unavailable. They went.
They were that close.
Yes, they were close. Yeah.
Close.
I think about 90% full.
Yeah, it was 90 or even 91%.
Yeah.
It was so close
Yeah.
to taking off the entire database, and that could have been a bad thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So they identified just in time, they deleted the clone, and all was well. Now, again, here they were lucky, but and I don't know, Simon, if you know that, but when I started my career, I actually started as a system manager, and I was responsible for quite important systems. And I can't tell you the number of times I was waking in the middle of the night when there's some crucial issue happened and a problem occurred, because we all know problems happen in the middle of the night, usually in the weekend as well, especially if there's a holiday coming up, right? That's always
Accurate.
all the problems happen.
Accurate.
Now, think how great it is where you have a tool that can tell you there's something set up incorrectly before it leads to a problem, before it leads to a 3 a.m. call. And that's exactly where Workload Factory can do. In this case, what Workload Factory can help them is twofold. One, it can we have a check actually that looks for old and unused clones.
Yeah.
And the second thing, Workload Factory can actually show you if you have any volumes that are not set to be auto-grow. And both of those things you can both see in Workload Factory, but also fix. If Workload Factory identifies a clone that is old, that has been there for too long, it will raise you'll have an issue in the well-architected dashboard, and you can simply then go ahead and delete this clone, again, either automatically with Workload Factory or you can do it yourself. Same goes for auto-grow for volume.
Them. I think that would be the best thing to show you.
Let's show them.
I just think that we should probably go to SQL to be accurate once again.
Let's go
There you
to
go.
SQL. Absolutely, and let's go
to SQL.
Yeah.
There we go.
Right. So let's go, and you can see that some of the checks we're doing. In this case, this is a clone, and the system identified some problematic clones. And you see the different clones we have here. This is our testing environment, so please don't judge us that we have some clones that are here for about a year. And you can simply click here as always on fix, and you have a few options here. Let's choose delete. And again, as always, Workload Factory explains why we're doing something, how we're going to do it, and whether or not there's any impact. And if we choose to fix it with Workload Factory, and I do trust Workload Factory, so I'll let it delete the clone for me, and that's it. Clone is gone. Now, the nice thing about it is I do not have to go ahead and start to see whether there are clones all over my environment. the system automatically identify that for me. And for autogrow, same things, we can do something very similar. Again, the system will identify here, in this time under the ONTAP configuration, different configurations for ONTAP. For example, Esti showed you earlier the tiering configuration. And for me, in this case, everything is set up correctly for the auto size, but obviously if it would not be, I will go ahead and do the same configuration. So that is it for my third case, I think.
I think this is an example of, again, there's the saying of the God is in the details, right? So exactly the details here are very important. And I hope that three cases gives a taste of first what should be correct and practically on specific cases which happened and shouldn't have been happened, and also having a tool like Workload Factory that exactly take cares of all the details. Now, we focus so far on the well-architected dashboard, but actually Workload Factory can do more than that for databases. So, Esti, can you tell us a bit more, just briefly, on different kind of overview of other features, other capabilities for optimization of databases?
Absolutely, I'll be happy to do that. But you know what? I do think that right before we move to other capabilities, I just want to highlight one thing that is important. Everything that we showed you right now in the well-architected assessment with all those checks was every time in a scope of a single database. But I guess that you're in charge of more than one database, and you would probably tell yourself, okay, awesome, you can check the configuration, but I don't have the time to go database by database and start checking those configurations. So exactly for busy people such as yourself, we have the well-architected consolidated view. That is a high-level view that allows you to check your entire database estate that runs on FSx, to check all the SQL and Oracle configurations. And you can see by configuration everything that is affected by a specific configuration per database engine. Or if you scroll down, you can also see the investigation per resource. So you can see all of your databases right here, and then you can see which one needs your attention, and then go to the dedicated view and see exactly what should be fixed. So this is just one more way to consume the same information, but from a single place without having to investigate one by one. So that was something that I really wanted to show you. Other than that, what else can I show you? I think that it would be interesting to go back to our inventory and to show you that for each database that we have here, we're not only checking for a predefined configurations, but we're also allowing you to do a SQL Server error log analysis using AI. By the way, available also for Oracle. What does it mean? Let's go right here and click on Analyze, Analyze Errors. And I would like to show you something. Before I even explain what we're looking at, I'd like to ask the audience, how many of you can tell me what this means? I guess the answer is not many of you. Maybe the 8% of the DBAs that are here with us on the call, guys, maybe you're extremely talented and you know what that means, but I would say that it is not very human readable. So because this is one of the issues that DBAs need to face on a daily basis, we have developed an AI tool that scans the entire error log on your database server. Then it gives you a count of each error by severity. Those are unique errors and how many times they appeared. At what hours they have appeared. So you can now investigate, you can see what was the peak hour, you can try to correlate to what has happened in your environment at this time. And moreover, you can translate that not very friendly error message to a human readable explanation that says exactly what happened there. And then based on everything that AI was able to pull from the internet and from blogs and KBs, it also gives you some remediation steps. Just a note, we're using Bedrock for that purpose, and the Bedrock is in your account. So the error log does not leave your account. All this information is done within your VPC with a VPC endpoint to Bedrock. So this is one more very cool capability that we have for databases that run on FSx with Workload Factory. And let's see what else. Maybe some of you have not yet migrated for some unexplainable reason your databases to FSX. But truly, if you are considering to move some kind of workload that might be running on EBS today, or maybe on FSX for Windows, or maybe it's even on premises, and you just want to understand how much it is going to cost you and how it is recommended to migrate it to the cloud with which configuration, which EC2 instance size, etc.
And how much is going to cost you?
Exactly, to get a drill down into each component of the cost. We have developed that TCO calculator. So as I said, it works for workloads, databases that currently run on EBS, currently run on FSX, or currently are on premises. For each one of those, you'll get this list, that inventory, and then you can take a server right here and click on Explore Savings. What it gives you, that is, well, I have chosen a very bad example, guys, but I like it that I've chosen a bad example. It is a very realistic calculator. It tells you exactly how much it is going to cost you, and we are not going to make things prettier. If FSX is more cost efficient, awesome, go for it, utilize it. If it doesn't make sense for that specific use case, then don't migrate it. Keep it on EBS, keep it on FSX for Windows. Sometimes there are better solutions for a specific configuration.
I
Anyway,
think I
yeah.
think there's value even if you compare it to other storage service, but in this case you compare on premises, which is a very complex translation, right? It works just differently in the cloud and on premises, and here you can actually see how much it would cost on Amazon, on AWS, and what would be the configuration translated from the on-premises configuration.
Yes, I do want to show you a bit what kind of data we have. Really just a brief. We are collecting metadata from your on-prem server by a very short collection script. We're identifying your current usage in terms of performance needs on your database, and then we translate it into requirements in the public cloud, helping you to plan your migration. We will tell you exactly how much each component of the solution is going to cost you. And we can also provide you a detailed calculation for your FinOps, for example, if they're asking you, how did you get to those numbers? How did you decide that this is how much you're going to pay for each part of the solution? So we're really giving you a thorough explanation for that and making you ready for your FinOps discussion.
You know, I see what I like about it, that we don't just look at the storage layer, right? Again,
That's
we
true.
look at the storage, we look at the cost of the license, we look at the database itself, the host. We can help you to identify whether or not, you're using the optimized setup today. Maybe you're utilizing a too expensive license and you can reduce the cost there. Maybe you're over provision your EC2 or the server you're using. And again,
That's true.
another place where you can save on money.
That's true. And one more thing that is worth mentioning regarding our calculators is that for those calculators, as you know, FSX is a storage system that is normally used by different resources or maybe even different use cases or workloads. It is mostly recommended to combine and use it as a consolidated storage. So we have also added you that option to select multiple servers that will be consolidated into a single FSX. And then you get that TCO calculation for a consolidated view. So that is for our TCO calculator. And
I think
what's
there's
that?
much more to see in Workload Factory. We covered the well-architected dashboard, we covered the inventory, we covered the TCO calculators, different TCO calculators, and there's more. There's sandboxes which you manages clones, etc. We will be glad to dive more. If you wish to, you're welcome to reach out and schedule with us a demo to have a one-on-one session with one of our experts and to walk you through it, to help you with either using Workload Factory or just consult on how to use FSX from top, how to optimize your workload. And
for
also,
databases and other workloads, right? Don't limit yourself to just to
of course,
databases.
Yeah, that's totally true. And also, Workload Factory will focus today on databases. Workload Factory has other areas as well for general info storage, for VMware and others. And another option is just try it yourself on console.workloads.netapp.com. You can go directly open in a minute an account for yourself, a user, and try it out. And again, we will be glad also to help you also from the service itself. You can reach out to one of our experts. It's not an AI bot. It actually sends to a real solution architect that would help you to do whatever you're looking for to do. So I think there's again much more to do. Let's kind of let's give it time to ask questions, right? So just to wrap up what we discussed so far, we talked about the different options to optimize database workloads with FSx on top. It provides the powerful protection, high performance, the declining capabilities, and options to optimize your workload. And then we dived into the different configuration, whether it's related to connectivity to the storage from the database or performance that in that case will degrade it and how you can make sure it doesn't happen. And also we had a case of loss of availability because of the outer growth and clone that weren't managed correctly and set up correctly. And again, Workload Factory is a tool to make sure all those implementation are done correctly. Let's just mention again, it's a free of charge tool. And the idea is that NetApp would like to provide this tool to make sure that you utilize the technology correctly, that you benefit from what this service, FSx for NetApp, can do for you and set up correctly. And we also have a team to support you to do that. So we'll be glad to reach out and have one of our experts. It's free of charge to have this call. Our idea is we have that great technology. NetApp provides this great technology. We would like our customers to make the best out of it. So this is what we have in terms of the cases. If you have any question, you're welcome to send now. We have a couple of more minutes to address any of your questions. Maybe it's time to address a couple of questions that were raised so far.
I see there was a question here asking, how can you see the list of the databases? Okay, that's a great question. I think that, you know what, maybe I can just go back to the demo. It will be even easier for you to see it. There we go. It's a great question. So essentially, I think that you're asking about what kind of permissions did we ask for in order to be able to populate that inventory, right? Please tell me if I'm explaining something totally off from what you were intending. But right here, we are asking for a bunch of credentials in order to start using Workload Factory. And as Luba mentioned at the beginning of our webinar today, we support the gradual trust model. So that means you can start with a view-only role, and then you can also give Workload Factory better access and more permissions and allow Workload Factory to automate things on your behalf. But the minimal required permission would be right here. You select the workload on which you want to enable the different permissions. You switch on that toggle and you select the bundle that you want to have, view, plan, and analyze, or you really want to allow Workload Factory to do remediations, or you even want to allow Workload Factory to deploy databases on your behalf. By adding that minimal tier of permissions, which you can see right here, that is the IAM policy that is needed, we'll be able to scan your EC2 instances, identify on which ones you have SQL or Oracle running, and then using that, we populate that inventory. So this is how we can see your databases.
By the way, I see it also allows us perhaps some additional permissions to also automatically identify your EBS and other solutions like EFS in some cases and FSx for Windows as well. I think one of the things that I like personally about the system and also the customers that I work with is the fact that once you put up those permissions, Workload Factory utilizing standard AWS APIs, there are common APIs that are available everywhere and are well documented to actually see your environment and provide all the view of that automatically without you having to say, oh, I've added a file system. I've added a database, I changed the database configuration. You don't need to go ahead and manage that once it's done. Workload Factor will catch up the change and show it to you automatically. All you need to do, as Esti said and showed, is provide us very simple permissions. You will be able to see here things like describe and list.
Yeah.
I'm sure that some of our audience would be glad to have the fully automated way either to read their environments and perhaps also to implement the changes for themselves. But I'm sure there are also some of them that would think, I'm not sure I want another tool that can access my environment. Can I utilize those capabilities without granting access for it? So do we have something to offer for those customers?
Well, Semyon, it's a tricky question because to be able to answer that, it's a spoiler alert. I need to tell you something that we haven't released yet. But, okay. As you remember, we have shown you that IAM policy right here, right? This is the minimum credentials that are needed. And this is to be able to populate that inventory. But Semyon mentioned something very correctly. Some of you may be hesitant on allowing us to scan your environment, and some of you simply may not have the access needed because you're storage admins and maybe you don't have access to cloud permissions or moreover database permissions. Because we have identified that gap, we are currently working and it will be released in about a month or maybe 2 months, something that we will be probably calling a one-time assessment or an offline assessment. What does it mean? You will have a new button somewhere here saying download a script, collect metadata from my environment that you simply run directly on your database host. You can view the output of that file. It is text file. You can see that there is no PII, nothing sensitive in that output. And after you have reviewed that output, you simply upload it to Workload Factory and we run that assessment against the output. So that is a one-time assessment. So for all of those of you who have answered the first poll saying that, or the second poll, I can't remember which one it was, that I rarely check my configuration, or maybe I check my configuration only after something has changed or migrated or deployed, that would be a very good option for you guys. It's a very simple, no registration, no credentials path. Script, upload, there we go. I have my results.
It's
Set
a
and
great thing to
forget.
run immediately after migration. I think, the customer you mentioned
Yeah,
earlier,
with
right?
Oracle, with Oracle.
Customer would have benefited a lot from running a script like that.
That's true. That's true.
I see there's a question related to optimizing compute layer. So could you show us what workload factory can do in this context?
Sure. Okay, SQL, let's choose one. So as Luba told you earlier, we are checking 5 different categories of configurations. Storage-related configurations, by the way, regardless if they are on the storage itself or related to storage but run on the host. Then we have a compute section, application, resiliency, and cloning. So the question is about compute, right? Let's scroll down. And I'll simply show
While
you.
you're doing that, I just want to maybe point to the people something that you might have not noticed. For each one of the checks, we also have a tag saying what else it's done, right? Is it around cost, optimization, all those things, right? Because a lot of time when a configuration is perhaps not configured correctly, it could have multiple effects, right? It could maybe lead to increased costs, to reduce performance, all those things. And with Workload Factor, it's very easy to identify what you're looking for, and you can actually filter by that if you want to look at things
That's
around
true.
cost.
Yeah,
You can know only about that as well.
I think that's a great point, Luba. In some cases, there's not only the need to actually implement the best practices, but also to show, to prove that you are aligned with best practices, right? So this is also something that you can do with Workload Factory to export that and show, hey, those are the best practices, and automatically external tool checked what are the best practices against our environment, and this is the result. So now I can prove to whatever I need in the organization that we're implementing all the best practices that we need to.
So I just want to make sure that I am answering the question correctly. The question was, what else do we have around the compute validation or configuration assessment, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we see that we are checking for compute right sizing based on the usage pattern that we have identified from CloudWatch. We're checking if the EC2 is under provisioned, over provisioned, or optimized, and we can also do the change on your behalf. We're checking for operating system patch. That means Windows in that case. For Oracle, we're checking for Linux patches to make sure that you're running the latest security patch. Network adapter settings. This is also configuration that is related actually to cost. If you have something misconfigured right here, you see those kind of configurations. TCP offloading feature, it could really, really increase your cost. So this is also something that we're checking. And lastly, is the MTU alignment. We're checking that the MTU is aligned across all the way to validate that your performance is not affected by wrong MTU. So yeah, that's it. And by the way, guys, if you have further questions on what do you have under each category, just go to Workload Factory. You can access it either from NetApp console. It will be on the left under workloads, or you can also use our dedicated URL, console.workloadsnetapp.com. This is the one that I'm using here. Both of them are using your same user that you normally use for NetApp console, and you can just take a look at that. So it's really cool. It's free of charge. It takes you 5 minutes to start using. Or if you just want to schedule a demo with us, we'll be more than happy to guide you through on the exact configurations that are relevant for you.
I see there a question that somebody, I guess, right now open an account to Workload Factory as we speak, which is a great thing to do. And they're asking if there is an option to explore it out with kind of demo account. I guess he wants to explore the options without actually trusting his data itself. So what do we have to as an answer?
I wish I was able to give you access directly to the demo environment. Unfortunately, it is limited only to NetApp personnel. But as I said, I'll just repeat it. I'll be more than happy to meet you and give you a live demo on that using my demo account. Sorry that I can't give you access to it directly as much as I want out of my hands.
Cool. All right, I think we're getting to the end of our time today. This is the time to thank you, Luba and Esti, and thank everybody who attended the session today. Again, you're welcome to try Workload Factory. You're welcome to reach out and schedule a free of charge call, and which will with an expert to consult on your workload or Workload Factory itself. And thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.